Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited to introduce you to our guest. This is going to be exciting. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. Life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. Our guest today is a friend of the Culture Matters podcast. If you listen to the podcast, you've heard them on the show. They're not only a supporter of Culture Matters, a steward of strong work ethic, strong work culture, but very brilliant advisor of the home buying and wealth building process with home ownership. And today we're recording a New Year's Eve episode of 2023. Towards the end of the day, people get antsy. They want to go out. They want to party and do things. Me and the one and only Bill Mervin are recording this. So if you're listening to this in 9 months and you're thinking, why am I not where I want to be? The question I have to you is, where were you on New Year's Eve? Thanks for coming, Bill.
I'm always happy to be here, Jay.
Where did you show up strongest in 2023?
2023, where did I show up the strongest? I would say it was, I don't know, just what comes at the top of my mind, fortitude. This was a incredibly challenging year in our industry. I think kind of peak to trough, we were down something like, as an industry, 60% or so from 2021. I mean, that's a big retracement to manage. And so it took a lot of I think mental discipline to hang in there. I've seen a lot of folks that it really, get caught up in the fear and the paralysis of something like that. And while we took lots of licks and bumps and bruises along the way, we stayed the course, stayed true to working on the things that we felt were going to put us in a position to make it through and then to thrive on the other side of this thing. And that's probably what I'm most proud of.
As far as the difference between 23 and 22 for the industry that you're in, for those that have no idea about the mortgage industry, what type of dive did the mortgage industry as a whole take or succumb? What type of dive occurred from 23 to 22?
Yeah, I
From
think it was
23 to
more,
21.
it was more 21 to 22. I think we saw an additional, the big jump was 21 to 22 because we were, not only were purchases still running strong, but refinances were, booming in 21, fizzled out towards the end. And so I'm more familiar with the overall, 21 to 23. Like I said, that was about a 60% retracement. But I think if I had to speculate, I think it was probably 35 or 40% from 21 to 22, and then probably an additional 25% or so this year over last year, which was also a tough year. It's interesting because, and I talk about that, testing your mettle, right? And last year was a tough year. I don't think anybody really, not too many folks predicted that it would get as tough as it got this year. And all along the way, I'm not taking glee, but saying, hey, a lot of these newbies, they haven't seen a tough market like this. They haven't seen this. We're going to shine. And then, where I saw a stat this year that overall transaction volume was the lowest in 40 years, right? And so then there was a point where it's like, all right, I have to admit, even I'm in uncharted territories here. This is beyond any sort of tough market that I've seen in 20 years of doing this. So yeah, it was, the overall transaction volume in mortgages was the lowest in 40 years. So
Where do you think you fall in line with that? Like your team, your
yeah,
organization,
I think
the
we're
bottom 10% or
what, say that again?
the
What's
bottom 10%, the
bottom
middle?
10%?
Where would you say you fall in?
Oh, no, I mean, I still think I think the numbers, I don't haven't finalized, but I still think we'll be a top 1% originating team in the country still this year. We've been for the last four or
So do you
five.
consider yourself an ungrateful person?
That's funny.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, this is good.
that's a good point. Well, I mean, the challenge, no, I am grateful. And that's why I've looked for silver linings, and I am proud of the work. It's tough to take to find too many victories in a tough year overall, right? You can't run from, yes, I try to focus on how we're performing to our peers, because that's an indication of, the work that we're doing, because you can't control certain things like the market that you're operating in. But you also, the reality. So, I run a bigger team. That team has overhead, right? And so that was a challenge for me, where all you're doing is, if you're, yourself as an originator, or yourself and maybe a loan officer assistant or something like that, there's not as much to manage. Whereas, we constantly this year had to figure out ways to make sure that, it's twofold, right? One, there is a part of me that, the folks that, while I'm running a business, I also try to be a good steward of my team, right? And so, there's people that helped us really reap in 2020 and 2021, and even prior to that. And I don't want to be one of these folks that's just straight off the numbers and saying, all right, we're down this much the team's got to go. And so there was some aspect of that. And then, additionally, the fact is, I don't think we're going to stay here forever. And we've invested quite a bit in the folks that we've invested in to get them to where they're at. And so, that created a little extra level of complexity, because we do have a bigger team, we got bigger overhead, and we frankly are probably tuned to run at about 50% above where we're running right now. And so that took some concessions to keep that all together, but we made it. And I've had to tighten my own belt loop quite a bit, but you know, uh, I wasn't foolish, and went out and spent all the earnings from the good years. And that's the game I'm playing, is the long game, right? And keeping everybody together, and to try to clean up during those good years.
Someone listening to this in the New Year's Eve of 2024, are you still in the business?
Me? Yeah, Jay. I kind of often joke with clients, like, this is what I'm cut out to do, right? If I'm gone, there's either something happened to me, or the whole business collapsed, because that's what I try to remind myself and tell my team all the time, right? There's going to be people out there closing loans, right? It's just, are we going to be one of them? And I would say yes.
What does it signal to our listeners that we're doing this on New Year's Eve, 2023? We're recording this at three in the afternoon range. There's other, yeah. What does it say? What is there a lesson there other
Well,
than
it's
toxic
interesting.
masculinity?
Yeah, well, I loved when we got into that last time. And it's funny, because your first question, I kind of answered it slightly differently, but when you asked about, like, we're most proud of, or how do I show up the best, and I think I've talked about this on previous podcasts, right? Like, I know I talk about it often, where it's like, okay, when staying into the office late till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night is, I've got to get 10 apps out, right? And you can start counting the money on what you're going to get paid when all those loans closed. It's it's not nearly as hard to show that type of discipline and to put in those hours, right? When the results are not as tangible, right? In fact, the opposite, when you feel like you're not always getting the results, but you just stay true to the activities, you stay true to the habits, you stay true to the disciplines, that in the end, that there's only one result that can come from them, when you continue to do them day in, day out, month in, month out, etc. I think that's where the winners show up. And so I guess then, to bring that back to your question, is just this is something I know you're committed to. I know it's something I'm committed to getting out there and speak to more folks, get out in front of more people, and to Not necessarily that there's a direct correlation between having these conversations and growing business, but to just get out there in front of, do the things to continue to, elevate, talk to intelligent folks about business and things and otherwise. And so I guess that's just it, right? It's just, doesn't matter whether it's a busy day, doesn't matter whether it's New Year's Eve, doesn't matter, any of that stuff, that you just keep doing the things that will bring results. And I think that's maybe the lesson, or what it might signify.